Well, good afternoon. And just like that, we're coming towards the tail end of day two of Canadian Women in Cybersecurity 2021, hashtag #WeAreCyber. This week-long celebration of International Women's Day, the theme is Choose to Challenge. And as I promised you yesterday, every session that I conduct, I'll choose to challenge myself, acknowledging my privilege, on one particular aspect that applies to this conference. For this session, I'm going to choose to challenge myself on what do I mean by diversity. And when I thought through the idea of diversity, it immediately dawned upon me, diversity is not about letting in another voice to the table. It's not about letting in another person to the table. It's about making sure that you're hearing the voices that are currently present at the table. Talk about equality. There's also something called equity. I challenge myself to deliver my work in an equitable fashion. About diversity, I think about what's happening right now. And my panelists today are individuals who come from diverse backgrounds who already are at the cybersecurity table. I ask myself, as well as my audience, how are we listening to them? And how are we taking heed from some of the guidance that they're giving us through their successes? This panel is even more important to me because some of the panelists come from an ethnic background that I'm from as well. South Asian subcontinent, way back when I was making my decision about a career, you had four choices. You could become a doctor, accountant, engineer, or a doctor again. As you can tell by my LinkedIn and my Cyber Exchange platform profile, I didn't become any of them. I'm curious to learn more about the journeys of my panelists and also share my perspective. Welcome to this panel on attracting diverse talent, focusing on a bunch of leaders who are going to talk to you about their role in attracting diverse talent in cybersecurity. My name is Abbas Hirji. I work at Durham College at both the AI Hub and the Center for Cybersecurity Innovation. It's my pleasure to welcome Priya, Sukhwant, Ruba, Rukmani, Sarah, to this session. I'm going to begin by asking each one of them to introduce themselves with one very special tool. Starting with Priya. Priya, introduce yourself, the work that you do, and give us one definition of diversity. Priya.
Hi, and thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it. My name is Priya Sharma, and I'm the Alliances Director at Cloudentity. We are a security software company focused on dynamic authorization. And I'm focused here at the company working with our strategic relationships and partners, primarily our system integrators, which is our key set of partners that we go to market with. When I think of the word diversity, I think of differences in uniqueness. I've got two words there, but the variety of differences in uniqueness and really recognizing what the uniqueness is in each individual difference, right? Be it a mix of race, gender, ethnicity, culture, and so on. So I was going to say, I also, I think of myself in that sense, in the fact that I'm a woman in a male-dominated space of Fiji Indian descent, migrating to the country back in the late 80s and 90s, and really persevering in a very diverse culture and a mix of things.
Want to work with that because yesterday in one of my sessions I said, success doesn't come because of our diversity or doesn't come, because we've managed to overcome our diversity. It's because we've embraced that diversity. I think that note that you mentioned about your journey or your family's journey, the diasporic journey from Fiji in search of economic livelihood and how you've not just gained that for yourself, but build programs for others around you is something that I definitely want to get into and appreciate the fact that you recognize partners as essential to the work. Priya, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. I'm now going to go to Sukhwant. And Sukhwant, same question to you. Name, what it is that you do, one definition of diversity that spells out your essence. Sukhwant.
Thank you, Ali, for having me here. Hello, my name is Sukhwant, and I'm professor in computer programming stream of School of Business, IT, and Management at Durham College. I'm also a member of Cybersecurity Innovation Center and Program Advisory Committee of CPA Cluster. I'm a certified AWS academic accredited educator. And my research interests are in the domain of analysis of algorithm, information security, machine learning, and data science. For me, diversity means understanding that each individual is unique, and we need to nurture our individual differences in a safe, positive, and wonderful environment. It's about understanding each other and moving beyond simple tolerance to embracing and celebrating the rich dimensions of diversity, which is contained in every individual. That's what I mean by diversity.
Fantastic. And Sukhwant, it was a pleasure hosting you also at last year's Canadian Women in Cybersecurity conference, which was exactly 1 year ago, a day before the world here in Ontario at least had shut down because of the pandemic. And there's one thing that I can say about Sukhwant is her level of preparation, and that she instills that in her students. You know the saying, if you're failing to prepare, you're preparing to fail. She's somebody who embodies that very, very strongly. Sukhwant, looking forward to this discussion with you. We'll go over to Rukmani. Rukmani, the same question, your name, the work that you do, and tell us about diversity from your perspective.
Hi, I'm Rukmani, as you said, works as a professor for computer systems information security offered by School of Business, IT and Management, Durham College. I hold dual master degree, one in electronic sciences from Satyabama University, India, and computer networks from Ryerson University, Canada. And I'm certified academic instructor to teach Cisco CCNA courses, CCNA security and IoT security. Also AWS authorized educator to teach their cloud practitioner courses. And I also associate myself with the Center for Cybersecurity Innovation Hub in Durham College, just as a mean to be connected with industry partners to mutually learn and explore the options to overcome threat vulnerability by building resilience. So as in my view, diversity is inclusiveness of everyone. So despite their race, their cultural background, gender, and orientation, so many other factors, inclusiveness, breaking the barrier is one important thing. As per ISC2 survey, in cybersecurity space, only 15 to 20% were female working in the group. So we have to work harder to explore and make it available for more inclusive space.
Absolutely. Work harder, work smarter, and more importantly, work together in that partnership model that Priya had alluded to in her introduction as well. You know, I've said this before, to teach is to learn, and Rukmani is somebody who embodies this important quality in a teacher, which is very diverse in its own set, which is to make sure that not only are you teaching your students, but you're learning from them. And one of the things that you see her doing a lot is spending time with the students. And I want to reflect on that because of the diverse population we have here in the Durham region. Rukmani, thank you for that. Next, someone who has been instrumental in some of the successes we've seen at Durham College, specifically at the AI Hub and soon at the Center for Cybersecurity Innovation. Ruba, pleasure to have you as always. Please introduce yourself. You know the drill, your name, what it is that you do, and diversity in your language, my friend.
Thank you, Ali. My name is Ruba Alomari. I am a professor and a program coordinator for emerging technology grad series at Durham College. I teach in the cybersecurity and in the computer systems diploma. I'm also involved in the AI Hub, working with one of the applied research projects with Ali on the AI Hub. And recently I'm involved with the launching of a new degree, very exciting times for us at Durham College. We're launching a bachelor degree of artificial intelligence that we will be welcoming our first cohort in September 2021. This is one of the first degrees in Canada to be specialized in artificial intelligence. So excited and looking forward for that. Going back to your point, Ali, about, go ahead. Did you want to say something, Ali?
Nope, go ahead. You were going to talk about diversity. Please go ahead, Ruba.
Yes. So diversity for me is not about filling quotas. It's something much more than that. When you think about having these different sets of gender, ethnicity, races, religions, it's because these are quantifiable indicators of different experiences. They bring different experiences because these are, I'm a woman, my body is different, I'm different, my experience is different than, for example, in terms of gender, than a male person. So it's not only about, I know and appreciate everything you said, that bringing them to the table, and are we listening to these diverse populations on the table, but we need to look further than that. We need to look at why is diversity it's not happening naturally. Why are these people not at the table to begin with? What is steering them away? Like for me, a woman in cybersecurity, our topic for today, what's steering women away from cybersecurity? If I may take one more minute, Ali, in 1992, when I went to school, I went to computer engineering school. Our cohort was 41 students, out of which they were all males, out of which 3 female students. One of them is me. 2018, I walk into the class at Durham College for my first class. There are 20 students in the classroom and 1 female student. Her name is Emily. Emily, if you're listening, if you're watching, shout out to you. Today, we are in the fall and winter of 2021. One of my cohorts is 21 students. 19 of them are males and 2 are females in my cybersecurity graduate certificate. This is 29 years difference between 1992, 2021, and yet the percentage and the numbers are very similar, if not even worse than it was in 1992. We need to look at what's happening. Why are women going away from this profession? And we need to address that when we're thinking about diversity.
Absolutely. And Ruba, I couldn't agree with you more. I thank you for making your introduction relatable, feeling the safe space to be personal about it, but more importantly, reminding us that diversity is not something we need to explain. It's something we need to embrace. And when you brought up the subject of numbers, I think that's the perfect bridge with which to bring Sarah from the region of Durham into the conversation, because like I've said before, data is not about numbers, it's about insights. And she's someone who can help us understand the insights with the kind of data, for example, that Ruba brought to the table. So Sarah, please introduce yourself. Once again, you know the drill. And in your own perspective, what does diversity mean to you?
Thank you, Ali, and thank you, everyone. I'm policy advisor with the Regional Municipality of Durham in the Department of Economic Development and Tourism with the Diversity and Immigration Program. So I don't work in cybersecurity or in tech at all. The primary element of my portfolio is immigration. And so I help to coordinate the Durham Local Immigration Partnership, or the Durham LIP. And so this is a network of over 100 community partners who work together across sectors and across systems to enhance the settlement experience of newcomers in Durham. And so diversity to me, as we've heard, can be the things about us that make each of us unique. And these are typically spoken about the things that we can count, or the things that we can see. So our age, the color of our skin, our ethnicity, gender identity, sexual identity and orientation, our physical abilities, and so much more. And as Ruba mentioned, diversity relates to the experiences that we have in our world, and are informed by our elements of diversity. And so this all leads to a diversity and life experience within the systems that exist and that inform our perspectives. So I see all of this as influencing what we hear about as the diversity of thought, the different ways in which we think and we process information, the different ways in which each of us problem solve. And we're very lucky in Durham region, where I'm situated, to have a very richly diverse population. Now, as we've talked about, when we embrace diversity, we work towards inclusion and we work towards equity, which I think is something different.
Absolutely. And Sarah, firstly, I want to thank you for also showing our audience and myself, because I'm here to learn. Just noticing the way in which you all introduced yourselves, reflecting on each other's comments. You, for example, mentioned what Ruba brought up. Somebody else mentioned what Priya brought up. This is extremely important because to my audience, diversity also applies to the way in which we share our stories, The most painful thing are untold stories, and these women here have created a safe space for that. I also want to point out another point, Sarah. You mentioned not being in cyber, but this is where conferences like this are necessary. A shout out to the team at Cyber Exchange, a shout out to the team at Invest Durham for making this inclusive space for cyber, because what in the world isn't a part of cyber delivery today? We are cyber being the hashtag, you're an embodiment of that very hashtag. Ladies, thank you so much for this wonderful introduction and giving me lots of material to work with. Priya, I'm going to bring you back into the Canadian context because I know you're out in the US. We're going to teleport you here to the Canadian side of things and put you on the spot with a couple of questions. A student once told me and explained to me the difference between a pessimist and an optimist, and said, you know what, the pessimist will look at the whole, the optimist will see the whole donut. You saw an opportunity in a space that was very male dominated, and you championed through in the space of cybersecurity, and also with numerous awards behind you, also led the path for other women and other diverse groups to join the cybersecurity space. What brought you into cybersecurity, and what were some of the skills that kept you afloat and allowed you to excel to the level that you're at today with Cloudentity? Priya?
Yeah, thank you. So I actually never thought I'd end up in technology, let alone the cybersecurity space. I had the intention of doing something in law enforcement of all things, going into maybe the FBI or Secret Service or something of that nature. It wasn't until I landed a job at a small startup software company while still in school where I thought, the technology path to me seems to be one that's going to be more interesting for me. There's always going to be change. It's going to be a lot of fun. And this is something I want to pursue. So 20 years later, here's where I sit today, right? I'm in technology, I'm in software, I'm in cybersecurity through various software companies, from startups to larger household names, different types of technologies, and then eventually landing myself in the cybersecurity space about 10 years ago and absolutely loving it. The journey that brought me here did have its share fun of challenges along the way, right? Being a female in a male dominated space, first of all, right? Also, kind of going through challenges of really having to work extra hard, having to prove myself, and then eventually really gaining the respect that I deserved, which then pushed me into the different promotions over the years, being kind of giving me that confidence and drive of taking on the different roles and, getting awards along the way, getting recognized for all the work that I was doing and kind of showing a difference in the fact that, hey, women in this world and in this space can actually contribute a lot as well as men. And, that's kind of what brought me here today. So it's been a great ride. It's been a great journey, and I'm successful. And I think the hard work has paid off in really proving that, diversity is key in being successful.
Absolutely. And there's something there that you mentioned about jobs and never expecting to sort of be in this situation. This is something that I'll emphasize for our audience as well. Priya has brought together a very, very important notion around here about how you think about a career in cyber. I often find students, or I often find individuals who know how to apply for a job, but know nothing about the job that they're applying for. Priya's done something where she's built community around her work. She's built networks around her work, built relationships. And that, in that people process technology paradigm, is absolutely essential. And I do want to come back to this, Priya, around how you've built community around your work, because as we have witnessed on LinkedIn in the 2.5-3 weeks that I've known you, and the awards that you've been the recipient of, and the kind of brand that Cloudentity has, you've built a following. And I want to come back to that a little bit, and how you as a leader for many other and a mentor, how that's shaped a lot of careers. So we'll come back to that, Priya, but thank you for that opening comment. Sukhwant, if I can come to you and to our audience, you can drop your questions in the live chat. I see a couple of questions have been DM'd to me. Perfect, keep them coming and I'll weave them in. Sukhwant, if it's okay with you, I want to work at something Priya said. You mentioned this piece about working directly with students and being certified in different models of training, different models of learning, etc. Could you make a comment a little bit about how, from your perspective, do you encourage young students or new students to consider a career in cyber, especially women or folks from different identities that may not necessarily see a career in cybersecurity? How do you go about encouraging them?
Yeah, thank you, Ali. It's a wonderful question. And for that, in order to support diversity, I always encourage my girl students to, join a mission which is called as a Girls Who Code. And that mission is to close the gender gap in technology. And that mission actually contains clubs, college loops, immersion programs, which actually gives stipends to the girl students who actually go ahead with the coding level. And then they interact with college-aged women who are interested in tech to support one another. That's the first thing which I always prompt my girl students to move ahead, to give them an encouragement. And other than that, I always, make my students aware of the latest updates on the cybersecurity. These days, if you see, many tech companies now offer self-paced training, self-study, certifications, and so on. We have cyber free training and communication resources. We have resources from AWS in terms of IoT security resources. I also take in my classes few TED Talks about cybersecurity, because they are very, very impromptu. They are very, very innovative, because that brings in the journey of a person who actually has gone through different levels and then brought cybersecurity into their space. And that really motivates the students, because if you're hearing someone who was nothing earlier and then made it their place in the cybersecurity, is really, really good thing. I also invite guest speakers from industries to give students an insight into the latest developments in cybersecurity. And that actually helps students to have a firsthand experience in industry expectations. And, it also helps them to build networks. So these are the few things which I always move ahead with my students to have them more interest in the cybersecurity area.
Absolutely. And to our audience, I often hear this joke that's made that security professionals put the no in innovation. Here's an example of where there's absolutely no in innovation. Through our work with our president, Don Lavisa, through our various academic deans, we've been able to create these environments where, basically to diverse groups, where, as Sukhwant pointed out, if someone can see it, they can believe that they can be it. And that's something that Sukhwant has really championed in her classrooms, and I commend her for doing that. Speaking of the classrooms, I want to bring Rukmani and then Ruba into the conversation. And Sarah, then we'll sort of unpack some of the notions that have been brought forward by these wonderful individuals. Ruba, let's start off with you. Ruba, one of the first times that I met you, besides in 2018 when I was 2 months old at Durham College, and you were about a month old at Durham College, we were at orientation. One of the things that I started to get engaged more with you was in your work where you're championing a lot of diverse groups, especially young girls in high schools, to take part in robotics competitions. And one thing that I noticed is you were asking them to look at these machines, unpack it, ask questions of those machines. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey, especially when it comes to gamified learning and engagements? Ruba?
Yes, absolutely, Ali. It's one of my passions to volunteer with youth in general and with young women who might consider a career in STEM. So 2 things that I make sure I'm involved in. One is the first robotics competitions that are hosted by Durham College every year, where we work with young students. They are all high school students who are working on building these robotics based on a mission that is designed ahead of time. And again, the same observations. There's very few women on teams. Many teams that are completely boys. Some teams that they have a number of young girls with them. So once they see these judges and these volunteers around them that are female, that are they can look at them and see, right, we're working in cybersecurity, we're working in artificial intelligence. It's always good, to encourage the youth in this regard. In addition to this, we also host conference for young women in science, technology, and the trades at Durham College. And I think, Ali, you are one of the you develop a workshop to work with them. I also volunteer in that conference and develop a workshop that is specifically about robotics. We work with robots, and during the workshop, the girls get very excited. We host about 600 girls, grades 7 to 9, coming from different school boards in Durham region, where they spend 2 days, in our Whitby campus, looking at professional females in different trades. They see a female welder, they see a carpentry, they see a professional cybersecurity females. They work with them, they work with their hands, they feel the joy of these different disciplines. So we hope to encourage them, working at that level, to encourage them to take a career in STEM.
Absolutely. And Ruba, I clearly remember this. One of the things when we were talking, you really emphasized on the role of an audience. And one of the things that you did through your social media, through your networks, is you made sure that crowds came out to watch these events. I still remember those robotics competitions. And, I think that role that you played in building an audience for diverse groups is absolutely essential, because now they can suddenly see that they matter. And that's such an important role that you've played. Another thing that I'll add to this, and I'll bring Rukmani and then Sarah into this conversation, and I'm sure Sukhwant and Priya would agree with this. By the way, Priya, speaking of fan followings, one of the chat comments actually has hashtag Priyastan. So for those of you who have read the book Londonistan or understand Pakistan or what the stan stands for, basically it means the following and the people of Priya. So Priya, I'm going to come and unpack that just a little bit. But Rukmani, building on something Ruba just said, cybersecurity is a very interdisciplinary field. And one of the things that you've done very well with Ruba is, although you may not have said it, but you've shown it and led by example, is you don't tell people a path to cybersecurity. You empower them to build their own path. You've looked at cybersecurity from an interdisciplinary lens. You've been in the private sector and now in the public sector. Can you talk a little bit about how you've shared what skill sets are needed in cybersecurity and let, for example, marketing people or business people realize, hey, there's something I can do in security? Rukmani?
So I would say still, we some organizations do not realize the importance of cybersecurity and hiring cybersecurity professionals. But in the meantime, last year when I was attending CyberX, that changed the insight which I had, and me and Sukhman planned to leave after the afternoon, but because of the intense of information we received, we continued to attend the event completely, and it provided a lot of insight. So immediately I responded, and I went to my class. I spoke with some of my girls about the path they can choose. And trust me, Ali, a couple of my students got a job soon after graduation in cybersecurity, in sales, and some as an associate. This is a win-win for a professor. It's about,
Absolutely.
You're not telling them, you're not laying path, but you're empowering them. There is an opportunity. And in certain cases, it's not necessary that you have to have an education in cybersecurity. It's the passion, and it also, you have to make a lifestyle change because right now we are connected globally. The more we connected, the more we are losing our privacy, and the more we are losing our resiliency and the border. So this has to be instilled in all the students, despite girls. So it has to be instilled in all the students about understanding the field itself. And now Cisco is celebrating International Girls' Day, and they have offered Introduction to Cybersecurity course. It's a 2-week course available for everyone online, free, and anyone can register in that course. These are certain courses offered by many organizations in different perspective, right? So we have to empower our kids to go through that, because everyone is connected. This pandemic have changed the way we are connected and way we work. So completely we are moving towards online medium. So the more we move online, the more we have to be protected and know about cyberspace and being secure.
Absolutely. And you know what, just speaking about like courses that are available, I want to do a shout out to Heather from IBM. IBM has a booth on the Cyber Exchange environment. They've got a group rather, the Cyber Exchange environment. They also done IBM Cyber Day for Girls, which is at the Career Expo. Speaking about that, I could see at least 90 to 100 new faces engaging about what do you mean by Cyber Day for Girls. And I agree with you, is that the private sector experience that you've brought in to our public sector has allowed our students to see how companies want to relate with them, or how they can help companies become more relatable. I also want to commend you for another thing, Rukmani, and that is keeping in touch with your students, especially the diverse cohort of students that we have at Durham College. I've said this repeatedly to my students that a journey once begun never ends. And that never-ending connection that you have with your students is absolutely essential to breeding that diversity we have in Durham College as well as the Durham region. Now, before I go to Priya about a question that is actually coming around your perspectives around partnerships, I'm going to go to Sarah. Sarah, you've heard a lot of aspects around data. You've heard a lot of aspects around what our professors, what Priya, etc., are seeing in the market and are seeing in the economy. Rupa brought up a very interesting point, and that point was on the aspect of the number of diverse groups she could see in her classroom. Can you shed a little bit of light on the diversity within Durham region itself and what the opportunity looks like from your perspective? Sarah?
Hi, Ali. Yeah. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the work that I do as part of the region and some of the opportunities. So a big part of the work that I do is around around partnerships and building community partners across sectors and systems in order to contribute to building welcoming communities where newcomers, but also everyone can feel that they belong. In this space, there are some conditions. So those are that immigration is incredibly important. It's important to Canada. And also understanding that people are shopping for communities and they're shopping for post-secondary education and institutions where they can feel that they belong and where they can grow. And so essentially we're competing for talent. And I'll talk about immigration from a few levels. So the Canadian immigration system selects individuals to immigrate largely based on economic characteristics like education levels, experience, language ability, whether they have a job here, and much of it is also based on labor market needs. And then on the other side of the spectrum, in many cases, when someone immigrates to Canada or anywhere, they do so because of economic opportunity, and they have either they have or they need a job, or they're coming here for schooling. So we intentionally, through the program that I work in and with our community of partners, we intentionally focus on deepening the conversation around the economic importance of immigration, but also the economic importance of diversity and inclusion in the community and also in the workplace. So in addition to immigration contributions more broadly, we can think about other diverse elements like our aging workforce, like people are working longer. And while on the whole, Canada's domestic population isn't growing, like we're not producing enough, we still do have youth in and exiting secondary and post-secondary education. And then of course, we can't forget about people of different abilities. So typically we think here about persons with disabilities and the neurodiverse, and so all of whom can contribute to our economies and bring strengths and opportunities and have different needs. I would say in terms of opportunities, the diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI as it's termed, that understanding and advancements in DEI have really been ticking upward over the last several years, and certainly in 2020 amidst a global racial reckoning and of course the pandemic, and just understanding the impacts of the pandemic on certain populations in our communities. We are seeing many communities, we're seeing many institutions like our local post-secondary, as well as employers, not only seeing the business case for diversity, so in terms of contributing to our economic prosperity and to our organizations, but also that it's the right thing to do. So these are opportunities, but I think diversity is one thing, as we said before, but really to achieve real success in order to be truly inclusive, employers, organizations, communities, institutions like our post-secondary education institutions really must change the way that they support and foster inclusion and equity. So these are great opportunities.
No, I would agree with you. And Sarah, there's a tagline that, and thank you for shedding perspective, but also being a DI champion in your conversation. One of the things, a tagline that myself, Sonia at the region, Jackie, again, a very diverse group that you have working on economic development in the region, we mentioned this statement that, here in Durham region, we don't focus on barriers of entry. We look on building bridges to access or bridges of access. And that's represented in the kind of faculty we see at the college, the kind of faculty that we see at the university as well. So shout out to our academic leaders, but more importantly, that partnership that's been established between the region and the academic facilities. I think it's called City Studio, for example. These are all very good examples where ideas can be incubated, crowdsourced, and you can start working on diverse projects. So Sarah, thank you for that perspective. A couple of questions have come in which are for Sukhwant, Ruba, and Rukmani. So I'll give it a little bit of what I like to call a little bit of masala as I bring them to you. But before I go there, I want to go to Priya. Because Priya, a question that's come in, and to the audience member that direct messaged this to me, I'm going to reword it with your permission. I assume I have it, just slightly. Priya, this speaks to the diversity that you bring to the table and how that diversity of experience that you have, the diasporic experience, the experience of different skill sets or different jobs leading to a role in cybersecurity, how does that influence the partnership model that you run at Cloudentity? So if you can help our audience understand a little bit about the work at Cloudentity and how you've built the partnership model to grow the Cloudentity user base. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. So I think, it comes from past partnerships as well, right? So the different roles that I've had at different and various software companies and the different types of partnerships. So I've worked with value-added resellers, right? I've worked with some technology types of partners. I've worked with regional-based boutique partners, strategic partners, and then of course the system integrators. So I've got a portfolio of a variety of different partners and how to work with each one of them. So we work with some partners that might resell our software, for instance. We work with partners that might do and help out with strategy work, do assessments, do advisory work. Ultimately, most of the partners that we work with or that I work with are looking to do and help us out from an implementation perspective. So regardless of if we are selling the software directly to a customer or say a partner is doing that, they will come in and help us do the implementation work on the back end of it. So, and that's a lot of times too, we're working with partners to sort of extend that reach into the field, into opening up new opportunities for both of us. So it's always a joint partnership that we're going into as we're tagging and going after, opportunities each time, right? So partners are able to, they might have reach into companies or into, say, C-level suites that maybe we may not have. So building those relationships from the ground up and, kind of, I think trust comes into the mix as well, right? Not trust directly just with the partnerships, but also at the company you're working with. You want to work with your sales reps. You want to work with your executive staff. You want to make sure that you're bridging the gap and kind of making the wheels turn from an overall partnership perspective from all aspects of it.
Absolutely. And I think something so important in this is that, and I encourage everyone, Cloudentity has a couple of links that are spread across cyberexchange.ca, and a couple of their members are on the platform as well. One of the things that really appealed to me about the Cloudentity process is, I'm very interested in access management. And you've heard me say this before. Once upon a time, it was I think, therefore I am. Today, it's I connect, therefore I am. But what happens after you connect? Access management is really about that life cycle of the experience. But it's that experience that Priya brings to the table of knowing how different organizations can work with the tool set and the tech stack that you provide. Lesson number one, if you want to attract diverse talent, it's not about finding the start line. It's about erasing that completely. Everybody starts at a different point. And Priya's recognition of that, I believe, subjectively perhaps, I've only known her for about 2.5 to 3 weeks, but I think her approach to partnership, less vendor management, really is what is going to spell the success for the Cloudentity model. So Priya, thank you for that. And I am going to come back to you with another question that has also come in about Cloudentity, but I'll take a few others and then come back to you. Ruba, I want to start with you. And then we'll go to Sukhwant, Rukmani, and then back to Sarah. Ruba, this is a question which I felt related to you because you are, as far as I know, our first female certified CISO at Durham College. Do you think that cybersecurity, given the amount of certifications around it, and this is the words of the questioner, the glamour that goes around with that certification, do you think that certification enables more diverse groups to join cybersecurity, or does it make them fear the space a little bit more? Ruba, your perspective.
I actually think it goes more into making them fear the space more. This is very competitive certificates. They get more difficult by the day. Now, for example, I'll give you certified ethical hacker. It used to be theoretical test or a theoretical exam only. And now it's theoretical and practical. The practical is 3 hours compared also to CISP exam and CISA exams. I think these are, they could be a deterring factor for some people, feeling that if they don't have these certificates, they are not, I'm not going to say good enough, but they are not maybe at the level that will enable them to apply to specific words. Especially you mentioned CISO. CISO is a leadership kind of certificate in cybersecurity. So it could be a deterring factor for some people that they have to maybe write and take these certificates.
Absolutely. And this is something that, to the audience member that asked this, when you look at security certifications as well, look, it's not a one size fits all. And this is where, when you get to engage with folks like Priya, like Ruba, like Rukmani, like Sukhwant, and even for that matter, Sarah, you really begin to see whether there is value to that certification or in some cases, you can take some free courses that give you the perspective and then you decide for your own if you want to dive deeper into it. But I do believe that these certifications give you a little of something to aspire towards and allow you to build community. The CISO community, for example, very strong, very active. The CISO conference is all based around that community as well. So I do feel these certifications build community, but with the right people, such as Ruba, who can help you guide you through that process.
If I may, Ali, add to that, if you look at the NICE and ICE cybersecurity framework, it lists more than 52 jobs in cybersecurity, and it does kind of a mapping between these different jobs and industry leading certification bodies like EC Council, like ISC Squared, JAC, CISA, and so on. So there are so many different roles that somebody might consider. They might become a computer forensic investigator, computer security editor, penetration tester, ethical hacker, and so on. So it's hard even to decide which certificate you want to pursue unless you are clear on which, the job that you're applying for, which field in cybersecurity. Because like you said, it's not one size fits all. There are lots of different job roles within the cybersecurity field.
Absolutely. Infinite paths that can lead you to that successful career in cybersecurity. Ruba, thank you so much for that. Sukhwant, I'll come to you, then Rukmani, and then back to Sarah. Sukhwant, you and I had this conversation earlier on. It relates to a question around how can universities and corporations and colleges attract more diverse talent. And you and I were talking a little bit about language. Now, I know that, the language of economy here in Canada, predominantly English, French, if you're looking at the US, perhaps even Spanish. But sometimes I've even noticed when you're engaging with some of our students who are international, you'll speak to them, for example, in Punjabi or Hindi, so on and so forth. Do you think that language also and acceptance of different or entertaining of different perspectives can help drive a more diverse audience to our programming? Sukhwant?
Yeah, Ali, I would say yes. It's actually a cognitive science, if I term it as. It's just not the language which helps to, connect people. It's also the cultural background that we come from, because that instills the power of thought, power of perceiving things differently. Now, of course, as you mentioned, we have international students, and sharing the same language helps us work better together. We can share thoughts with similar counterparts. But this comes sometimes we have a disadvantage that we may not see a different perspective. So now it has got both advantages and disadvantages. But then yes, sharing the same language with my international students, they they feel more confident in coming up and speaking up and saying their problems or their issues, what they are facing in their particular courses, and they find it more comfortable. But then if you see, if I have to talk to you in terms of cybersecurity, I think whenever I'm speaking to my students about risk and threats, So sometimes I conceive these problems in my own native language. And, as I'm a movie buff, I try to relate to my students a kind of a story of security experts as heroes of the movie, and then hackers as villain of a movie. So I tell them, okay, we have this kind of a story, and we are going to build up to solve it very constructively. So what I essentially feel is, yes, having a language is it connects people having similar language. But what is more important here is we need to think that, yes, our students should build up problem solving and critical thinking abilities, which is what is most important. Whatever language a person comes from, whatever cultural background it comes from, this is super, super important, where people can think about a problem and think about how to solve it. That's super important at my point.
Absolutely. Drawing from Priya's point around knowing that no one size fits all solution can guide your relationships and guide your partnerships, I think no one language, or if I can reverse that, one of my mentor once said, and I say this cautiously, where he said, intelligence is not colored in white. And intelligence comes in different stripes, and we need to embrace that. So thank you, Sukhwant, for that. Rukmani, drawing on what Sukhwant said, Priya, more questions coming in for you. The Priyastan movement now needs to declare independence very, very shortly, because another 6 questions and we only have 12 more minutes. So try and keep your answers short, and we'll try and race to at least 2 more questions. Rukmani, drawing on what Sukhwant just said, I want to ask you a question on tools and technology. There are multiple tools out there. Metasploit frameworks being one example. There are multiple tools that students can use. When you're trying to attract a diverse group, how do you make sure that you can train and teach them, but be also relatively technology agnostic? Is that a challenge for you, Rukmani?
In certain cases, yes, it is, because technology has evolved, and we cannot just teach us. I always tell my students, what you learn today, when you go out after graduation, it's not the case. You may not experience the same thing in field, because the framework is different. Every company uses different framework, different tools. But what we give in college is the platform and the understanding the student can seek, when they go in field, based on the experience they gained in the college. You always can connect things, how it works in the college, and you can connect in real time as well. So it is a challenge, definitely, because we have to be clear with the students, what you learn today is not the same thing you will be using forever. The moment you choose the technology as a career, learning is an ongoing phase. So you can't avoid learning. So you can't think that, you can stop learning at one point.
Absolutely.
If you want to be in this area, you have to be current.
Absolutely. And this is something that, when Ruba brought up this process of rewriting curriculum, so on and so forth, one of the beautiful things that I've seen happen at Durham College, and Ruba, I really appreciate your leadership here, is that you've never ever asked for us to review curriculum at the end of the semester. You've always come in the middle and say, hey, do we need to rethink something here, because of the pace at which things are moving. The previous session on Cyber Exchange led by MNP was really about keeping pace, keeping up to speed with all the rapid changes that we're seeing. We've gone through decades without change, and now within weeks, we're seeing decades of change. So it's really important to embrace that. Rukmani, Sukhwant, Ruba, thank you for that. Sarah, coming back to you. We're seeing the various efforts that, mindsets like Priya's, companies like Cloudentity, and then you take into the work that our academic bodies are doing, driving more diverse groups into the Durham region. Can you tell us a little bit about what the return on imagination is once we start to see more diverse groups coming into our community, and what that does for our technology base here in the Durham region? Can you shed a little bit of light on the economic stats there?
Sure. I mean, when we build more welcoming communities, and we're operating in a world where, as I said earlier, people are shopping for communities, and they want to settle somewhere that they are able to feel that they are welcome, feel that they belong, and they're able to contribute, and they're able to succeed. So it's certainly the return there for our economies are huge. And I'll talk about this in the context of immigration, and I'll talk about immigration from a few levels, and about why immigration is important, and how immigration relates to diversity. But so immigration is, as we know, incredibly important to Canada's sustainability, to our growth and our competitive position. We need immigrants. We know here in Canada that we have an aging workforce, and we can continue to expect waves of retirements over the next 10 to 15 years. And then we compound that with our stagnant birth rate, which currently we're not replacing ourselves. So all of that, what does it mean? It means that in order for our economy to keep growing and to be able to continue to enjoy our way of life, or the service levels that we do today, to ensure that we are staying innovative, and that our tech space is growing, we need to replace our aging and retiring workforce, and we need to rely on immigration. So today, immigrants make up about 65% of Canada's net population growth, and this is expected to increase to almost 100% by 2035. So that's huge. And so in order to meet our workforce needs over the next several years, we need a minimum of 350,000 immigrants each year. And so this actually only represents about 1% of our current population. Luckily, immigrants find Canada favorable. There's great international interest in immigrating to Canada, even now amidst a pandemic. And our government of Canada sees that and is prioritizing immigration. And in fact, they're prioritizing economic immigration. About 60% of immigrants are planned to enter through economic streams. And then to relate that more closely, there's a prioritization on tech as well. So our province, our provincial government will select immigrants through federal programs, but in tech streams. So drawing in individuals who have tech backgrounds to fill regional labor market needs. Now, locally, and I am relying on outdated data, census data from 2016, but our population in Durham region, 24% are immigrants. And so we can only expect that these numbers have increased over the last 4 to 5 years, just given policy change and migration patterns, and that this will continue to grow. And as we've touched on, our local post-secondary education institutions attract thousands of international students each year into programs that largely reflect our local labor market needs, and we want to retain that talent here. We know that immigrants are skilled and talented. Many are internationally trained, multilingual, as we've talked about, bring ties to international markets, and contribute to that diversity of thought that we've talked about in the beginning and throughout today. And that really is an outcome of increasing diversity in our communities, in our organizations, in our schools. And immigration really means, beyond that economic perspective, immigration really means great social benefits as well, enriching our communities. So there's huge return on investment in terms of immigration for our communities, but also for our economy and for sectors specifically.
Absolutely. And Sarah, I couldn't have said it better. Immigration is not just about bringing people into the country. It's about bringing perspective. It's about bringing places into the Durham region. And keyword there, growth. Growing is painful. There will be mistakes that are made, and we have ways to address that. We have these open dialogues such as this. I also want to add that the region of Durham has played a very fundamental role in creating more inclusive spaces around cybersecurity. For example, the Global Cyber Olympics games back, in times in BC before Corona, or the CPTC games that were held just before the CISO Forum. All of these have found different ways to get folks studying philosophy, folks studying psychology, to come in and look at a threat intel feed and think about that socially engineered campaign. How could this attack have been launched? So, Sarah, thank you for shedding perspective on that, and we'll definitely have follow-on conversations. Priya, coming back to you, kind of also on what Sarah had said around growing being painful. One of the things that I've noticed, and an audience member has asked this question as well, is around the presence that you've created for yourself. And people gravitate around you, and I've been joking about it, but it's evidenced in the live chat where people are championing for you and are cheering for you. What have you done to ensure, or what do you continue to do rather, to ensure that more diverse voices come to the table, for example, in your workplace? Do you have certain mentorship programs? Do you have certain KPIs that you've set around diversity? Can you give us a little bit of perspective there, Priya?
Yes, I think, you know, in my career over the years, having built or coming out of just dealing with self-confidence has a lot to play in the role I'm in today, and my personality finally coming out over the few years, and having mentors along the way, mentors in the sense of my boss or managers or executives taking an interest in me because they've been able to see my personality coming out and being able to develop relationships pretty easily, right? So any company that I go to, my main focus and main sort of role immediately is to start developing relationships with the key folks at each company, and then also in the different partnerships, right? And I think doing that helps with doing things jointly together, building the trust, because when you start to trust someone, you start to be able to have, you know, more positive outcomes, right? And from a diversity standpoint, I think I've been with a lot of companies that are diverse in many ways, not just specifically around the gender piece of it or the background from a culture perspective, but also coming from different experiences and skill sets and backgrounds as well, that has helped me sort of grow and become pretty self-confident in what I do today, and being part of, you know, really good companies along the way.
Absolutely. And Priya, you know, engaging with the Cloudentity team as well, I'd say another thing that you've done very well from a perspective of bringing diverse thought to the table, diverse experience, is you've welcomed and entertained questions. I remember when we were speaking prior to this conference, you know, you allowed me to question you. You allowed me to ask you, why did you want to be on this panel? Questions are the keys that unlock the mind, and I thank you for imbibing and enabling people to ask questions and creating a safe space. We've got 4 more minutes, and I want to get some closing remarks. We'll start off with Sukhwant. I'm going to put you on the spot a little here, but I want to give you about 30 seconds to respond. Sukhwant, in your experience at Durham College, can you go back to one moment that really defined what you were doing as a cybersecurity teacher?
Yeah, that's in 30 seconds, right?
Yep.
Okay, so it's difficult to combine the things in 30 seconds, but then yes, for me, I really love every minute spent in Durham College, honestly, because I migrated to Canada in 2018, and in 2018, I started working as a part-time professor here, and in 2019, I got a permanent faculty. So this is my first place, and I have taken a few courses in Ontario Tech University also. But then again, this is where I started my career in Durham College, and the kind of support I got from my managers, the kind of, you know, a kind of inclusiveness I felt here is super, super awesome. In terms of cybersecurity, I would say we have a community of different students, you know, different intercultural students. And when we see professors of different cultures again, it becomes so very easy for every student to get binded with the faculty, and it becomes life very easy. So the connection is really important here, and you know that is what I really felt here in Durham College. That's superb.
Thank you so much, Sukhwant. And yes, I can be a testament to the amount of effort that you've put in your teaching career and the amount you've given back to applied research as well. Hey, I'm recommending you for a raise. If it works, it works. So, hey, there you go. Sukhwant, thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to ask you to stay on as we do some concluding remarks. Ruba, let's go to you very quickly. Ruba, you juggle a lot besides just teaching and then managing different programs and then with family as well. What's one thing that drives you to consistently move that success barrier for you?
One thing that drives me is definitely my family. They're always behind my back. They're always pushing me. They're always encouraging me. But aside from that, Ali, I wanted to take this opportunity that we are in the International Women Day yesterday and the International Women Week this week. And instead, I wanted to actually recommend a book that made a big difference in, I've read, yes, that made a big difference. I recommend it for males and females to read it. It's called Invisible Woman, Exposing Data Bias in a World Designed for Men by Paris. You might have read it, where she, explores gender inequality. She goes into women's lives at home, workplace, public square, doctor's office, policymakers. She cites hundreds of studies from the US, UK, Canada. I know we're running out of time. It's just a book that I wanted to recommend for anybody who's interested in this topic.
Fantastic. And to our audience that's watching and enjoying the live stream with all of the effects, there's a little ticker in below. The book, so on and so forth, will be dropped there as well as in the live chat. Ruba, thank you for everything that you do, and thank you for bringing in more perspectives into the world of cybersecurity, including my own, which can often be left field. So thank you for listening to me and being on so many calls with me. Rukmani, over to you, Sarah, and then closing comments to Priya. Rukmani, to our audience, I'm going to say, Rukmani, you'll often see her in a meeting very silent. But I'll tell you this much, when that silence speaks, it can be very, very loud because she knows what she's talking about. Rukmani, very quickly, if you can you tell us about one thing that keeps you excited about coming into the classroom?
Students and uniqueness in every one of them and the interest they have in the course. So my experience as an advisor always helped me connect with them one-on-one. So I try to make that connection and build trust, and so that they can rely on me for anything. So that's one thing. And also the colleagues who I work with, Sukhwant, Ruba, we all share some common interest and passion that do help us learn and evolve in the college as well.
Absolutely. And you know what? One thing a mentor of mine once said is that the day you realize that you're smart is the day you realize that you're not smart enough. There's so much you can learn from your students. Thank you, Rukmani, for everything that you do. Sarah, over to you very quickly. What is one thing about Durham region and its diversity that excites you every day? Sarah, if you're still on, we cannot quite hear you. So if we cannot, and if we've lost Sarah, I'll jump over to Priya then, just in the interest of time. Priya, Cloudentity has attracted a lot of interest on the platform. Priyastan is now a hashtag soon to be trending. If people want to get in touch with you, besides the Cyber Exchange platform, how else can they get in touch with you?
Please give me shoot me an email. You can shoot me an email at psharma, that's PSHARMA @cloudentity.com.
Fantastic. And to the audience that's listening, you can connect with her and her team on the Cyber Exchange platform. I can tell you this is not going to be the last of our exchanges with Priya. There will be many, many more, including power hours. I know Sarah has dropped off, but I'll try and make sure that I can connect with Sarah at another time. I thank the technical team for making sure our session went smooth. To our panelists, I'm going to ask that you stay on this session so we can debrief for 30 seconds separately. I want to thank you again for your time. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedules. To our audience, in the next 1 hour, the CEO of CyberX, Mr. Madi Raza himself, the man, the myth, the legend, will be conducting a session with Ontario Centres for Innovation, previously known as Ontario Centres of Excellence, alongside Mohawk College and some other partners, where they'll be talking about securing entrepreneurship in cybersecurity, another diverse element of thinking about cybersecurity. If there's anything that I learned about how do you attract diverse talent into the pool of cybersecurity, then I'll say this much. That there's one narrative that we didn't hear from these ladies, and that's the pain that many of them have been through, the struggles that they have been through. I mentioned this in my session with Contact North last week, is that we need to pay attention to those stories we don't hear. And I wish that I had the time to actually delve into them. Because there's one thing I can tell you about these women. They're pretty much like that flower that gives its fragrance even to the hand that crushes it. Through all of those crushing experiences, they continue to give back to their community. So Priya, Sukhwant, Rukmani, Ruba, Sarah, thank you so much for all of your time. Please stay on so that we can debrief. To our audience, see you in 1 hour on cyberexchange.ca.